And I have 2 openings in the fire academy currently for the next.
In a very short period of time, in a matter of days. And the second is the fact that the chief has proposed for the next budget
Now that happened, I'm good.
to have an additional firefighter so that we can get ahead of the curve of what appears to be a series of losses of people. That obviously will remain with the voters as to whether or not we do that. I would that we decide on an offer of, conditional offer of employment to one of the candidates, and that we offer a contingent offer to the second candidate, should you choose to do that, with respect to our need. In other words, we would make it contingent upon the financial town meeting concurring that need exists.
In the budget board, we've already met the budget board too, so they're aware of my needs.
Thank you.
And they were agreeable to the proposal.
So what would be your pleasure?
I think just based on the interviews and based on readiness at this point, I think that offering conditional employment in the first slot would be to Jason Tower.
I'll second that if that's your motion.
That's my motion.
So the motion is made and seconded to offer a conditional offer of employment to Jason Tower. It would not carry the condition of approval of the position, because that position, except upon, were there to be some, perhaps we'd make it contingent upon the retirement of the other officer.
Contingent upon a slot opening up. Same thing.
Fine. So the motion is made and seconded to offer Jason Tower a position in the fire department, which is conditional and contingent upon, conditional with respect to fulfilling what we need him to do, and contingent upon the vacancy opening. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks. And what's your pleasure with respect to William Rose?
I'm happy to make a motion to approve him for, what did you call it?
In that case, it would need to be contingent upon
FDM.
the financial town meeting approving the addition of a person to the fire department roster.
I have, I'll make that motion for William Rose.
I'll second it.
Chief, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Does a candidate have to have their EMT and cardiac to go to the academy, or can they work on that before they go, though?
They can both enter the academy.
Okay.
The job offer does stress that it's funding.
I mean, it looks like Jason's going to have it in,
Offer says it's for funding.
okay.
My question to you, gentlemen, is the opening, excuse me. The first academy starts February 13th.
Right.
The following academy starts March 7th. So do I enroll the second candidate in the second academy contingent? He's going to sign a job offer, but if we lose the funding, he loses a spot.
Right. I think we can take that conversation offline as to which academy slot they go to. The contingency would be that the offer is rescinded, in that case, were the voters to decide, no, we're not going to add another person to the roster.
Yeah, thank you.
Straightforward. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, chief.
Next time we'll start before the rain.
Pledge allegiance.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for your patience. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll continue this meeting and again, appreciate your patience with our interview process. I have no announcements to make unless there's any that any of the other councilors want to make. Hearing none, we are pleased tonight to have with us members of the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank to brief us on a septic system loan program. If you recall, we had the opportunity to discuss that a couple of meetings ago and discovered or were made aware of the Infrastructure Bank's capability to help us in that area, more specifically to help our citizens in that area. So we look forward to hearing from you on that.
I just want to introduce Sydney Usatine, is that how? Usatine. I've been in touch with Sydney about this program. So we really appreciate you coming down here to give us an overview of what the program entails for our community. And just to give anyone watching or everyone here a little more background, part of the process of becoming enrolled in this program is also passing or creating a on-site municipal wastewater treatment plan for the town. And we've started that process as well with the planning board. So I wanted to ask Sydney to come down here to explain to the community why we want to get the wastewater treatment plant done, because this would be the main goal for finishing that up. So thank you.
Thank you for the introduction and inviting me out here. I'm really happy to meet with everyone. So I'm going to be talking about the Community Septic System Loan Program. It's quite a mouthful. We call it CSLIP for short, but I'll try to say the full name wherever possible to keep the confusion to a minimum. Next slide. So a little bit about the organization I'm with, the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. We are Rhode Island's centralized hub of local infrastructure investment. We provide financing for a number of infrastructure projects, wastewater financing, drinking water financing, municipal roads and bridges. We can also lend to clean energy, which is energy efficiency or renewable energy, and also climate resilience. I know Little Compton participates in our municipal resilience program, which I'm really happy about. Okay, so the Community Septic System Loan Program. This is a program that provides low-cost financing for communities to initiate a residential septic system repair program. So the funding is for residences to replace cesspools if they have them with a septic system, or if they have a septic system that's failing or needs to be upgraded or replaced, they can use the funding for that as well. As Andrew kindly mentioned, it requires a municipal on-site wastewater management plan approved by DEM, and I'll have a little bit more information about that as I go along. I thought I'd start by talking about the structure of the program first, and then move on to the benefits of why the town might want to participate and why the residents might be interested in this program as well. So to start, the municipality would apply to the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank for a lending facility. We would move forward and close that transaction using our normal lending process. Typically, the size of the lending facility is around $200,000 to start, although it can vary. Many communities have participated in this program for a long time and have very active programs. I've seen them borrow as much as $1 million, but I wouldn't recommend that to start off with. So that's the lending facility with the municipality. Once that transaction closes, the proceeds can be used to make direct loans to homeowners for their projects to replace the cesspool or upgrade their septic system. This closes via a note and a mortgage lien. The town sets the underwriting criteria, but the town doesn't actually have to perform the underwriting or the loan servicing. That's all done by Rhode Island Housing, which is our partner agency in this program. Then the loans with the homeowners close. They perform their construction project. That loan draws down the lending facility that's with the municipality, and then the loan enters repayment. It's just, the structure is very similar to a standard mortgage. Repayments are made monthly. As those repayments occur, Rhode Island Housing works with the Infrastructure Bank and reduces the obligation of the lending facility. The lending facility is non-replenishing, so once that fund is drawn down, that's it, but you're very welcome to apply for additional funding at a future date, and that's pretty common. Most communities that participate are repeat borrowers with us. I'll stop there. Any questions before we talk about why you might want to get into this?
Well, I'm just, is it income related? Like if you have a multi-million-dollar home or you have a $100,000 shack, is the income?
That is entirely up to you. So I've seen different things. Some communities really want to minimize their risk, so they might have minimum credit scores, they might have a debt to income ratio requirements. On the other hand, other communities want this to really be a service for their residents, and they might have a maximum income. So you can control what sort of risk profile and what where you want to gear this program.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so why would you do this? It's a service that you can offer your residents. It benefits us all when septic systems are properly maintained. It's intended to be an attractive, convenient structure for municipalities. The lending facility is provided to you at a 0% rate, so there's no cost associated. And then what you were talking about with the underwriting criteria, you control the risk. So you can set the different requirements up front. You can change them at any time, but once the process gets going, it should be fairly minimal staffing requirements. All of the loan servicing is handled by Rhode Island Housing. You can be involved as much as you'd like, but we try to keep it really minimize the time requirement on municipal staff, because we know that's always a challenge. And then why would residents want to participate? Really, it's the interest rate. It's a 1% interest rate. There's also a $300 closing fee. For that rate, 0.5% goes to the infrastructure bank to handle the loan servicing on the municipal side, and 0.5% goes to Rhode Island Housing to cover the residential loan servicing. The municipality can set any sort of cap they want on the loan. Typically, I see things around $25,000 per loan. Usually this covers the entire cost of the system, but depending if there's any specific geographical constraints or if you're particularly near the coast, sometimes the cost of these projects can vary a little bit. And then it's long-term financing. 10-year repayment term is quite typical. So this program has been in operation for 24 years. Our very first lending facility was closed with the town of Charleston back in 1999. Since then, we've closed over 1,000 loans, the end loans with the residents, and we've committed $22.7 million to Rhode Island communities. Right now, 17 Rhode Island communities participate. The first one, as I mentioned, was Charleston, and then most recently, we've had Smithfield join us just last month. So the big question is, what if there's a default? What if a resident doesn't repay their loan? Rhode Island Housing would notify the infrastructure bank, and the infrastructure bank would notify the municipality. There is a lien on the property, and so the municipality would have to repay the amount that the homeowner didn't repay, but could recoup that through the lien. I will say since 1999, when this program started, we have never had to approach municipality to repay one of these loans. That's not to say it won't happen in the future, and this is something that needs to be thought through. But we've managed to weather COVID and everything else without ever having to come to a municipality and have them repay a homeowner loan. I did want to touch on the municipal on-site wastewater management plan. I connected with John Zwarg from the Department of Environmental Management for this presentation. He asked that I include his contact information here. He's the one who handles the on-site wastewater management plans at DEM, and we'd be very happy to work with you and make sure that process goes smoothly. That plan does need to be approved before we can start this program. I know Little Compton doesn't have sewers, but I did want to mention 4 areas that have sewer services. Residents must tie into the sewer. They can't use these funds for a septic system if they have the option to tie into a sewer. We do have a fairly similar program, the Student High Loan Fund, that helps them do that. And then finally, this is residential only. Commercial properties are not eligible. It can be multifamily as long as it's less than 4 units in the building. And then I just wanted to quickly share, this is a typical loan application that Rhode Island Housing has. So the residents would fill this out, send it. They can either send it to the town for a first pass, or they can send it directly to Rhode Island Housing. It's one page, I broke it up into 2, but you can see it's pretty straightforward, pretty standard questions. And once Rhode Island Housing receives the application, they'll proceed with the underwriting and closing the loan. And that's it. My contact information is here. Please get in contact with me at any time. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sid.
A little Compton.
Yeah.
Is there any questions I can help with?
I'm not even sure what the term is. If someone has a mortgage already on their property, are the banks been allowing this to take the second mortgage basically for?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I believe, I would imagine they would have to get lender consent, but I don't know. I'll check with Rhode Island Housing and follow up with you.
Yeah, because, there's usually a sequence. The bank holds the first mortgage, somebody holds the second mortgage, the bank gets their money first, but does Rhode Island trump Rhode Island Housing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know.
Could this be used for new construction if the town were to make a rule that enabled it?
For residential, yes.
And no prepayment penalty.
No, it's just a $300 fee at close and then 1% on the outstanding amount.
Ask a quick.
Sure, please.
So I know that the plans are not your department, they're DEM's department. But in general, do you have a sense of how much those plans vary from community to community? Is there a boilerplate plan, or are they quite customized to each community? You may not know the answer to that.
I think it depends on what you're looking to do. There's certainly options that are towards the boilerplate side of things, but there's also a lot of opportunity to go into it as much as you like. The plan needs to be established, but typically once they're in place, they might require small updates, but you don't need to do a new plan to do a new plan.
Larry, can I answer that question based on my information that I've received? And also Sydney connected us with John Zwang at the DEM. And so he's already sent over some of the criteria that we have to include, when we're looking at doing this plan. But looking at other communities, some go really far in what they require their residents when they create this program. Some go as far as like cataloging, all the septic systems or cesspools in town and requiring, maintenance. Some are much less intrusive than that, or are more education based. They make recommendations to the residents on how to maintain their systems, and it's more like educational outreach to the community. So I think there's kind of a wide range of programs across the state that are accepted by DEM, and so we're trying to, I know Mike's looking at those now with the planning board and trying to decide what would fit Little Compton.
Thank you. I have a sense that an on-site wastewater management plan in one part of town would not be greatly different from another part of town. But is that a reasonable assumption? In other words, to your point, there's some basic tenets associated with it. Our ground and groundwater tends to be relatively predictable, if not productive, across town. And it would seem to me that one person's plan could be passed to another with some degree of a head start toward finishing it off. Does that seem right?
You mean the state or the town?
Well, to get DEM approval of the municipal plan.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
One of the differences is that the households here all have their own septic and well. In many towns, this addresses the septic, but they have town water.
Okay.
So the requirements of how far the septic system is from the well and
Tend to be unique to our circumstance. Okay.
So I just have a comment, I guess, or a question for Andrew and maybe Mike. Can we put our foot on the gas a little bit with this? Do we need to, I know you're looking into it. Andrew said you've talked to the gentleman, the DEM. Do we need to kind of codify this and get a group together? Maybe Denise Cosgrove, I know she's doing the GIS system, building official, maybe yourself, maybe Mr. Steers, and report back to the council and say 30 days. I mean, so, the rubber hits the road here. How does a plan become, how do we get accepted for this plan? I mean, we can talk about all this stuff, but what do we need to do to get there?
we may need some assistance in writing the plan. And so
So maybe that's something in 30 days you guys can bring to the council.
I think, yes, I think we need to close in with DEM on the minimum criteria. And then we can get their assistance on who has helped individual towns write their management.
All right, so, I don't want to, leave it all to the planning board. I'm happy to make a motion to, appoint yourself, maybe the building inspector, Denise Cosgrove, yourself, to do this together and report back to the council. I don't know if that's something that you've considered or will consider.
Well, just to give us more background, how long does the application process usually take for the community to join the program? At the end, if we were to get our DEM approved program, how long would our application take?
I would say about 3 months would be typical.
Mhm.
The big thing to consider is what the underwriting criteria is. It's up to you. So that once that decision is made, things can move pretty quick.
Okay.
When you submit the application, it goes before our board for their approval. They meet once a month.
Okay, so that kind of helps create a timeline.
I'm happy to make a motion to appoint yourself, Mike Steers, the building inspector, and Denise Cosgrove to report back to the committee on our next steps. Feel free to vote it down. I mean,
I'll second it.
yeah.
Any discussion on that?
Mike, are you okay with that?
What's the time frame?
Month.
We'll tell you what we know in a month.
Sounds good to me.
I will say, I am very approving of Patrick's drive on this. I think it would be a really good program for our constituents to be a part of, especially with interest rates rising on loans. And I think it could really help our community make sure that we're not contaminating our groundwater with, bad systems that exist out there, and give people the opportunity to improve their surroundings, their home.
You want to read it to me?
Well, it was 4 people, Andrew, Mike, building official, and Denise Cosgrove?
Yes.
Just those 4?
This was,
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Mr. President, I would encourage, I believe Don McNaughton is very interested in working on that as well.
I'm happy to amend my motion to.
Mike, Don and I were going to meet on Tuesday to begin the process.
And the town administrator. I amend my motion. Town administrator and Don McDonald. There you go. I know your plate had some room on it. And downstairs doesn't, though.
I'll second the amended motion.
So the amended motion proposes to appoint 6 persons to this group, that is to return 2 meetings from this one with a status report on Community Septic System Loan Program initiation in Little Compton. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you very much. You need not stop anywhere for a checkout slip. You should be. Really appreciate your coming all the way down here in this weather.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sydney.
Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's nice to meet you. I'll be in touch.
Pleasure meeting you.
So if you can borrow this money for your septic system on new construction.
I'm just gonna move right along here because
No, go ahead.
yeah. The next item of business is to approve the minutes of January 5th.
Motion to approve the minutes as written unless someone wants to change something.
Second.
Discussion on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next is the department head reports of the police department and the town clerk.
Motion to place the police department and town clerk reports on file.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Old business, receive a letter from the Rhode Island Saltwater Anglers Association. It's an open letter. Perhaps have seen it in the media. It concerns installation of offshore wind energy cables in the Secundit River. One of the things that stood out in reading the report is the saltwater anglers' recommendation that Route 88 be considered rather than one of the rivers or waterways, which seems to me to be, and seems to others, I think, to be a novel concept. This is a piece of property that's already been adjusted for asphalt, and digging a slot in it is not different than digging a slot 100 feet down in the middle of the river. So my thought was that we might consider either a endorsement or some method of saying, yeah, we'd like to do that. So what I would propose is that you give me or anyone else that you think ought to do this, the charge to prepare a draft resolution to bring to the next meeting that is a resolution of the council that speaks in favor of this. Now, I've charged all the way off to assume that you're in agreement with me that this makes sense. So perhaps let me just take a breath here and ask, is that in general how the council feels? And if there's public comment, how the public feels?
I'm happy to make that motion. I've mentioned it on meetings before, and I think it's a great idea. I think we should have done it. They should have done something like this months ago. So I charge you with writing up a document for our consideration.
Second.
All right, the motion is made and seconded to task me with preparing a draft resolution to return with the next meeting.
Just before we vote.
Yeah.
And I'm all right with this vote. I just don't know if anybody's been watching the news lately. A lot of whales are dying, and it's from the testing they're doing to put these things in. It's an assumption. It's a testing that they're doing to put these things in. I'd like to work with the council, maybe on the next council meeting, come back with a resolution to support a moratorium on the testing until they figure out what's going on. I mean, they're basically blasting the bottom with sound waves to look for structures to put the towers on. And in the process, something's happening. It didn't start happening until after they started this testing. So there's some connection, whether it's valid or not, I don't know, until they figure it out. I think there should be a resolution from a coastal community that could see these creatures washing up on our shores. But I've said my piece.
I would suggest to you that since it's not a matter on the agenda, that we hold that approval until the next, so we put it on an agenda. But your concern is heard, and we can do that. We can put that on the next agenda for consideration. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The next item of business is to consider the draft terms of engagement for town solicitor. As you may be aware, we have been in the process of advertising for, interviewing, and now making a decision upon selection of the town solicitor for the next 2 years. And I sent to the council members my early draft, or my first draft, of what I would say ought to be the terms of engagement. I'd like to use this as a jumping off point to how we proceed further with the process. But my intention would be that we would use this as the basis upon which to go to the entities that we've tentatively selected to take the next step in the process.
Happy to start.
Go ahead.
Just one area in the charter and the ordinance, if you notice, that gives the council 60 days to appoint a solicitor in the charter and 30 days in the ordinance. I know there's a few of those in the ordinance, so that needs to be cleaned up. I know, reading the minutes from our 1-5 meeting, Councilman Balbesky, and I thank you for this, as for clarification of the minutes. In a reference to the motion made at December 27th council meeting to task the town administrator and the town council president to return to a future council meeting with a draft financial agreement for the town solicitor. Said agreement should include a periodic stipend for expected services and allowance for litigation expenses. Seeking clarification as to the term of uses of allowances rate. Council motion respond to the intention of the wording to use the term allowance in a broad sense of periodic stipend and allowance to take that. So what we have here, I don't see any of that in here, and that's okay. But it's not what I expected to see today.
Well, I can show you 4 years worth, and I would anticipate that the 5th year, subject to our discussion with respect to hiring, would be similar. For 4 years, we have a solicitor budget that has varied between 127,000 and 130,000. It's currently at 129,000, and it consists of the 4 categories that are outlined there. The categories are legal services, which are services to the council, to officials and boards. A legal contingency, the intention of that allocation is costs associated with litigation. A salary line, which was placed in the budget as a result of negotiations with the IRS, who required us to account for the fact that we require the solicitor to attend council meetings, and therefore he is subject to direction from the council. Therefore, the council must count him, at least in some portion of his salary, to be obligated to attend meetings, and therefore act as if he is an employee of the town. It was an effort to reach a compromise with the IRS over the fact that we don't want to employ a solicitor, we want to engage a solicitor. And this was the compromise that was reached. So hence, there's this rather modest sum of $1,200, which is attributed to salary. Finally, consulting services, which are not the money spent on the solicitor, but rather on the person who would replace the solicitor or be available for capabilities he didn't have. So that's where that stands, and that's part of my second item in the agenda, but you're welcome to treat them as one.
The legal contingency, the costs associated with litigation, if I'm not mistaken, the current solicitor, that was billed by the hour. Am I right?
What his technique is to submit a bill where legal services are outlined and then subjected to a cap of the amount, which is 1/12 of that amount, which we attribute to him, or that we pay him for legal services each month. So there are months in which he has not submitted such a bill because he doesn't meet that threshold. But generally speaking, it's approximately every 4 to 5 weeks that he reaches that threshold and submits the bill accordingly. And then we'll account for the fact that he disallows being paid for whatever portion of that exceeds 1/12 of that line.
Yeah, so I understand all of that. But that's his stipend that you're talking about. And meeting, I'm talking about not meeting the threshold or not. Litigation is not even in any of that equation. He bills hourly at a different rate for that. Am I correct in saying that?
Litigation is, my recollection, it's not a different rate per hour. It's a different amount as a result of whatever the litigation is.
So it's not a part of his stipend. It's got nothing to do with his threshold.
It does not.
It's outside of that.
That's right.
So this second line, costs associated with litigation.
Yes.
What are we basing that number on? the hourly number on?
Well, we've done it based on history. You'll notice it goes from 54 to 50 to 50 to 49. So I would anticipate, given the costs that have been associated with his charges in fiscal '23, that the budget for fiscal '24 would be lower than that.
And that number is
We're in the business of creating that right now.
last year's number, hourly rate. 275, 250?
Oh, but you don't, the council doesn't set the hourly rate. I think that's what he's asking.
We accept the hourly, rate.
We accept it, but we don't set it.
Right.
The hourly rate is still the same hourly rate that he has in his normal
Right.
stipend.
Are you contrasting litigation hourly rate with?
I'm not contrasting, I'm just talking about the litigation hourly rate.
It's the same hourly rate that he has
Okay,
in his normal bill.
and that can be negotiated. We don't have to accept that.
Well, you're in the process of doing that now.
That's why.
That's what I'm trying to get at, what the number is right now, and is what?
It's,
Well, I don't have his application with us, but he cites it in his application.
It was 250? Oh, it was 275.
One of the sheets.
I know.
We have an invoice, Carol will
Right.
review that.
Depends on if it's staff.
Please.
An hour and a half is 277.50. So I think it's 185 an hour.
I think that's right.
Is it an hour and a half?
Because on his regular retainer bill, it's 185 an
Importantly,
hour.
what I'd
I don't
like
think
to
that, I
do,
don't think that's correct. When he applied his letter, when he applied for to be reappointed, he sent a letter, and he set his hourly rate. for
In
litigation
that
correct.
process, yes, he did, for going forward into your.
And what number was that?
I don't have that in
I
front of
think
me.
it was 275, if I'm not mistaken.
I do not have that in front of me.
I'm not going to.
let's get facts in front of us. That's not what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is move forward the selection process. I acknowledge the importance of your question, but I don't have the information in front of me because that's not what I'm proposing that we talk about.
I'm not talking about the figures here, so if we have figures, I'm talking about figures. And if we're gonna put costs associated with litigation, we should have a figure. And it should be something in an
This is
hour.
a budget. This is not what is charged to this line.
No, I understand.
Okay.
I mean, I do have a question that relates to the budget with the consulting services.
It's 185.
So that, the consulting services is not litigation, that's services to the council officials and boards, but other attorneys when the solicitor is unable to do his usual duties. Is that what?
That's correct.
And that's also outside of the
Okay,
retainer.
so the actual solicitor budget is close to $80,000.
The amount of money that eventually will pass to the solicitor, should he satisfy all these?
Not necessarily the current solicitor, but
A solicitor.
a solicitor who would be able to do all of their duties and for the town without going to outside legal counsel.
Except that each of them has suggested to us, even those that have firms in which another attorney in that same firm does it, were we to hire an individual as solicitor, at least we would need to provide additional funds for the person who is not the solicitor to do that task.
I think most firms. Well, so what I'm saying is, in the consulting services here, in this budget here,
Yes,
consulting services, does any of that $25,000 go to Richard Humphrey Associates?
it does not at the moment.
Okay, so, but theoretically, if we were to hire a firm, another firm, then that $25,000, if they never needed to recuse themselves from a situation,
Right.
that $25,000 would go to our single solicitor firm if that sort of work needed to be done. I'm trying to put a real number on what the actual solicitor line item is, because the $53,760 is not really what the scope of the work entails for this community. It's actually closer to that $80,000 when you include the consulting services, because that's the full scope of the work that this community needs.
I don't argue with that.
Yeah. So I think part of this process is getting to know what what the actual number is that we'd be expecting to be in the budget for the solicitor line item going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are very appropriate questions. I'm just saying this is how these numbers were developed in the past, and yes, we would need to defend them the same way. Now, what I hadn't considered is if the agreement was made with an attorney in a firm versus with a firm with several attorneys, would the numbers be the same? I mean, I think they would, but it could be that it passes to a junior attorney who is less expensive than the other attorney. So I'm not sure we're comparing apples and apples here, but I think it would not be greatly different.
When we go to outside legal services,
Yeah.
other than our solicitor, do the rates range in greatly, or are they pretty similar to what we normally pay?
I would say my quick answer is they're reasonably similar, but I really don't particularly pay attention to it because typically we're looking for something. We have an attorney who's particularly useful in labor issues that are associated with disability and that sort of thing. And so I don't really have a way to compare that rate to somebody else. That's the only person I know that does that kind of work. So it's, I can't be explicit about the answer to that.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
I read a motion that I guess was the basis for the document that you're presenting. Is the purpose of that document to solicit further proposals from your candidates for this position, or?
No, where we are in the process is we have now interviewed a series of people, and we believe we have we've selected them, we've not had a vote to select specific people, but we're at a point where we think we're ready to make an offer to more than one person. And what we're trying to do is to accumulate information that enables us to make a consistent offer to those people, given the nature of the what's the term, the company that they're in. Right now, we have a solicitor who is the only municipal attorney in his firm. That's not true of all the applicants. And so we're trying to make an offer, and Patrick and I have had some discussions as late as today regarding, so how do we do that in a way that's consistent between more than one entity?
I guess that's what I'm
Yeah.
getting at, that whatever, that you were trying, that's sort of what the discussion is here, to.
Yes, and what I've done is provided some information which may have been misleading in the sense that it got us down a path of, so how much does our solicitor cost? That was not the intention. It's certainly a reasonable question, but the intention is to try to get a sense of what the cost of offering a job as solicitor of Little Compton ought to be. Would you agree with that, Patrick?
Yeah, and I have to ask you this question. Do you think that we need to hire an attorney to guide us through this process? I mean, we've never done it in 32 years. This is the first time. I'm not a lawyer. I don't think any of those three here are a lawyer. To guide us through this and get us to an endpoint where we can give something to the candidates that we want to give them. Is that something that you would consider?
It is something I would consider. I don't personally, that isn't the way that I would approach it. I approach it from the standpoint of, we are the elected officials, it's our responsibility. But I acknowledge that another approach, as such as one that you're suggesting, is equally viable, and therefore, if that's what the majority wishes to do, I'm not gonna take my bat and go home. I mean, that's
I don't know.
the way to do it.
That's-
I don't typically ask attorneys what it is I ought to do. But I'm not the same as everybody else, so,
I don't know, but
most people do.
asking an attorney to advise us on how to hire an attorney. I mean, that kind of sounds like asking a fox to how to run the hen house. I mean, how do you pick that attorney that's gonna tell you how to hire a solicitor?
But you wouldn't.
I just see that as on the surface.
Well, I think you're right. We're dealing with foxes, and I think we need a fox to get us through, because none of us have done this in 32 years. No council has ever done it.
To me, it's numbers. I mean, it's what the budget can bear. And we've been in litigation over the past, 6 years, over a bunch of different issues that sprung up. And that's why the stipends went all over the place. So that's why the budget increased. None of the applicants would anchor down to, this is what I will charge you for the year. This is what it includes. This is what I'll charge you for the year. However, they said, when they go to court for something like with the police department, that's all separate. That's the stipend I was looking for. That's the clarification I was looking for, their rate. What rate are they gonna charge us with that? I just don't wanna base this number on past history over the last 6 years and find out that it ends up costing us more than it would have if we hadn't had all those litigations. To me, it's about the numbers in the budget.
So Paul, when we get the numbers for the budget, that's going to include the hourly rate for litigation. That's what you're looking for too, right?
I'm looking for a billable, what's out, we can discuss and debate what we're gonna pay the solicitor, whoever we hire.
Right, so that'll be one.
But what is the solicitor gonna charge us per hour for anything outside his fee, so to speak?
I think I asked
That's what they all gave basic rates.
Right.
But they wouldn't lock down to it.
So we're here to set that rate. We're here to tell them this is the rate, take it or leave it. No?
I suppose that assumes that one of them is within that rate. Otherwise, we don't hire
I
anyone.
understand. We won't charge $30 an hour. I understand. But I mean, we're here to say, here's what the position is, here's what it entails, here's the number for it. And outside of that number, here's the hourly rate we expect. Is it that simple?
I don't know. It could be. It could be if there was a firm or an attorney who said, yeah, okay.
So we're here to craft that today, some of it. You were trying to get there.
Yes.
So I'd say $150 hourly rate.
And is that based on an attorney that you spoke to? Or?
No, I spoke to 7 in an interview, and I've seen all their rates. That's where I come to that conclusion.
And you think we should ask an attorney what he or she thinks about our conclusion?
I would consider it because we've never done this before. If you want to ask someone that's not an attorney, I don't know, or ask no one, and we can do it. I have no problem either way.
I think Patrick's suggestion for hiring an attorney goes more towards the fact that we're outside of the 60 days after the election period and hiring someone, and what's our legal authority to move forward with a process like this?
Oh, my goodness. That's what we're elected for, precisely that. There are all sorts of things that come before us that are contrary, where we have transgressed some principle or something that we need to do. That's why old business item 3 is, I believe we should extend the engagement of the current solicitor until we complete the selection process, which I would expect we'd be able to complete by the end of next month, by the 28th of.
I think we should hire a different solicitor in the interim period until we hire someone else, or hire the current solicitor again. I think it should be an interim solicitor that did not apply for the position, that has no skin in that game, and is someone that can make sure that we're on the right track here.
why in the world would we do that in the midst of the process of selecting a solicitor?
Solicitor right now has a lot of stuff that he's working on
I think-
for us, so he'd have to drop all that and put it on the other solicitor, the interim solicitor, because he couldn't represent the town because he's not the solicitor anymore. So that could be very confusing. That could be very,
I mean, it's a consideration.
I suppose our current solicitor is the only person in Rhode Island that can handle all of the duties that we put on them. So I guess that's what you're telling me. There's no other attorney
I'm not
that
saying that at
practices
all.
municipal law that can handle the scope of work that we put out there.
No, not at all. It's a learning curve issue. Whoever it is that succeeds Richard Humphrey, whether it's Richard Humphrey or someone else, will have a learning curve. His obviously will be greatly shorter than the others in terms of understanding the community. But to say that right now we should precipitously say, let's set aside the current attorney because we've somehow failed to do the job that we were supposed to do within 60 days. And that's the solution to this process, doesn't seem to me to be an intelligent way to go about the business. It seems to me we ought to keep, I mean, I can tell you from being in the town hall, there's things that come through there every day that rely on people understanding what's going on. We don't do that with any of the rest of the positions in the town. I don't see the logic in saying, let's pick someone and have that person be told tomorrow morning, Shazam, we've chosen you as the interim town solicitor.
So putting that aside, old business too, consider draft terms of engagement.
Yes.
What draft terms of engagement have we decided on today?
That's the purpose of my question to you. Which of the things that I have proposed to you do you believe are appropriate? I've given you a set of things that are nominally chosen from the charter and from the town ordinance and provides one additional item, actually two, and those are to provide actionable recommendations in real time to the town council boards and commissions for their use in deliberations. I believe that is something that the council and other boards have brought to our attention that says we don't get that from the solicitor. So I think it's important to put that in the terms of engagement for the solicitor.
I agree.
The second one is compensation. The compensation is as may be determined by the electors of the town at the annual financial town meeting. We can opine as to what we think ought to be his salary or her salary, but the reality is it's the people who decide that.
Sure. Are you documenting the first one? So we have a list to go through for our draft,
I think this is
our
the
draft terms of engagement. I got it, but you just said one. You wrote that down, the first one. Real time with boards. That's one. That's one thing we all agree on here, right? Okay, so that's one. Two, compensation. Shall we make a stab at compensation?
No, I think we need, you mean, should we do it sitting here tonight?
Yeah. With the resources you've given us.
Well, what you don't have are actuals to date.
Okay.
And I don't think the administrator is prepared to say where we stand. I don't know.
That's fine.
Well, no, I would not. I mean, other than the fact that, I mean, if you want to set a rate, based on the interviews, certainly, you could do an hourly rate that you feel it's justifiable going forward, and you could do it in two ways. One is, what is it for town business and what is it for litigation? What is that you would, fly with for litigation? You certainly could set those two rates. I mean, based on the information that you have there, if I may just jump in a little bit, in terms of, when you say, okay, what should be currently, the zoning, planning and zoning has been outside of the retainer. However, if you look at those numbers, the contingency, you would have to think that the amount that's currently there on the retainer, which is about 54,000, I believe it is.
Right.
Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if that amount, that would need to be bumped up if you are to include the other two, but say this is your budget to, for town, for the planning and zoning and all others, business except for litigation.
That's part of, I mean, that's what I was getting at earlier with this consulting services part. Because that really belongs with the business of being the solicitor for this community. That number.
That number, that belongs more is for the extras that we, labor attorney, outside consulting that we've had to tap into, that's what would be included in that.
So where out of these numbers does the money come out of that goes to helping boards and commissions and the legal stuff that the solicitor doesn't handle?
Legal contingency,
I thought that was just litigation.
no.
So we're getting bad information up here.
So that's going to be in the legal contingency, is that what you just said? So it's not in one of these?
Costs associated, no, you're not getting wrong, where it says costs related to litigation, yes, those are included there, but that's not strictly that.
That'll be hourly rate.
Exactly, and
if
that, that amount that you're looking at, legal contingency, that's not litigation only, that includes zoning and planning, comes out of that as well,
Okay.
okay?
Real time.
Real time.
So real time is not the hourly, it's already going to be in his, in.
No, it's gonna be hourly rate, I mean,
It's going to be hourly.
that's correct, it will be invoiced to, for that, yes.
That's reasonable. I mean, that makes sense. Okay. So for what go ahead, Bob, I'm sorry.
Perhaps the abbreviations are where I've caused confusion here. My intention was, and I'm still not sure I understand, Andrew, where you're drawing the distinction, but let me try this. The legal services, are intended, that line is intended to be services to the council, to the officials of the town, to the administrator, and to boards and commissions. And therefore, they are relatively anticipatable. One can look and say, I think this is what this is going to cost us. The second line, legal contingency, and I have put confusion here because I put costs associated with litigation. Significantly, that is what that is intended for, but there are also other contingencies that might not have been anticipated. So the first two lines are, what do we think, or what do we know to some extent we're going to need to pay for, and what might we need to pay for? So those two together, $104,000, is the total package of that. Then we have a line that is frankly only there because we were obligated to define something that made him a pseudo employee without actually employing him. And so that agreement was made. And then the fourth line is the services we ask for from someone else for whatever reason our own solicitor can't do.
So
And we call that the solicitor budget, and that's not.
my point is, looking at the numbers here, we can go back 5 years in the bills. I'm willing to help out with this, take out anything associated with litigation, and only focus on the hours that this town has been billed specifically for solicitor services, whether it's from our solicitor or someone outside of the solicitor's office. And look at what's the average amount that this community is billed in a year going back 5 or 6 years.
I went back 4 years, and outside, it was $7,000 a year for Galvin.
Well, I'm saying we need to look at how many hours are expected, how many hours of billable hours are there as a part of this job? And that gives us the opportunity to think of a rate that would fit within our budget. If we knew how many hours are, generally spent being the solicitor of the town of Little Compton.
And then multiply that by an hourly rate.
Of 150 or whatever it is, yeah.
Okay.
And so, I mean, the numbers are there, it's just a matter of looking back and seeing what exactly the scope of the solicitor position actually entails in terms of billable hours.
But I hope that makes it evident why that can't be done by tomorrow morning.
No, and I agree with that. Yeah, that's a big job. Yeah.
Well, this has been very helpful to me to understand some of the puts and takes on this. I would suggest that what we ought to do tonight is to say, are we willing to extend?
We skipping down to the next one?
What?
On the 3? Are we done with 2? Consider draft terms, you're going down to the 3rd one? I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
No,
You're still on 2, draft terms.
right.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So if the draft terms of engagement require adjustment, I would say we ought to either do that here or do it and bring it back.
I'm happy to make a motion that you and Andrew work on that and bring it back to our next meeting in 2 weeks.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
I'll second that motion.
I'm sorry, and just reading this, what exactly is the motion?
The motion is that,
They're gonna come back with some clearer draft terms, Bob and Andrew,
All right,
in
you're gonna
our
come
next
back with-
meeting.
You're gonna come back with another draft,
Yeah.
okay.
May I?
yeah,
So in the course of reading there were 2 points. One was about timely recommendations, and the other was you read language to the effect that compensation shall be set by town meeting, which is what the charter says. But that is a chicken and egg thing. There are any number of things where the council sets the compensation, and all they seek is the approval from the town meeting of the compensation that the council is included, whether it's the salary of the town administrator or any of the fire chief, police chief, or the labor contracts. The town, as a practical matter, does not set the compensation. It seeks an appropriation based on compensation that the council has recommended. So I think that the exercise that you're describing, it looks to me like you're trying to get to a number or a range or a concrete description of the nature of the compensation. It goes beyond just the question of the town meetings. It's just another town meeting item that the council has negotiated and is proposing to the which the town meeting may not accept. It might cut the budget or raise it.
right. I acknowledge that what you say is accurate, but in fact, that's what sets the number we're debating, is the agreement of the town electors with, this is the figure. Now, do most of them know the level of detail that we're talking about here? No, they don't, but they weigh it and say, yeah, but that then constrains us to say, all right, that's what we have, 129,000 to work with. And so we'd like to get it right, or righter than
All I'm saying is that with this process, you've got to go first. You've got to throw out that number. That's all I'm saying. You can't wait for the town meeting to do it. You've got to come up with it.
That's, okay, that's a fair criticism of what I've written here. My intention was to say, it's not done until the cooks say it's done. So yes, we could say that more eloquently so as to capture both those thoughts. And I'm sure now that I have a second person working on it with me, I have a better shot at getting it right. And I look forward to that. All right, any other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. Is there an alternate model entirely? Like, could the town solicitor be a salaried full-time position? And then you would know how much.
We have asked other towns to tell us, none has said so yet. I'm not aware of any place that that's the case in the state, but I would not be so bold as to say that it's not happening anywhere. I'm not aware of anybody that hires a solicitor as an employee of the town, pays for health care and all that, and pension and that sort of thing.
It's usually really big communities, like Providence, Pawtucket, large cities that go to that model, but, yeah.
They got their own district attorney and all that other stuff.
Side by side.
I wrote your comment down. I got it. Are you ready to vote? All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Now,
So I can get you on.
I would like to move to extend the engagement of the current town solicitor until the selection process is completed on or about the 28th of February.
Would this be a legal contract that we're extending to the solicitor?
Would this be a, we have a vote of the council, not a contract with the solicitor. We don't have a contract with the solicitor.
See, this is where I'm nervous about, do we, we don't have counsel here to counsel us on this. We're not lawyers. So how do we hire this, our current solicitor, and keep him on until we have the process done? It's
You may
just,
think I'm being clever here by my use of English,
Yep.
but I'm saying, consider an extension of the engagement of the current town solicitor.
you think that carries legal weight? Do you think that's fine? I'm not a lawyer. I have no idea. That could be perfect. I have no idea.
It matters what this council, who is elected to carry out such functions, thinks.
I would like to get an opinion of someone that is a lawyer.
I mean, what would happen if we voted no on this? Would we not have a solicitor any longer?
No, we would have a solicitor. We have for the last,
So why are we voting on this
13
motion?
gentlemen, you have raised the issue with me that you consider the fact that we are in excess of 60 days from the time that the charter says we have to.
I just want to do it legally and correctly, that's all. I'm more than happy to extend the current solicitor. I think it makes sense. I think it's pragmatic.
If we vote-
I just want to do it.
If we vote to extend them until we make it official, then somebody, like anything else, somebody could drop a flag on the play and say, hey, no, you can't do that. But who's going to do that? So we end up with no solicitor.
Again, this is uncharted waters. I don't think a little Compton Town Council has been in this predicament before. So I have no prior reference to stand on here. I don't know. The town needs a solicitor. And I think it's pragmatic.
All right, look, I think I know where this is going. I move we we extend the solicitors, Richard Humphrey, we extend him until we vote for a new solicitor.
I'll withdraw the motion that I think was rather similar. I didn't name him, but I'll withdraw my motion. That's the motion. Is there a second to
I would amend the motion. I'm not comfortable with the motion because I don't have legal counsel to tell me about the motion. I think the motion's correct. I think we should extend the current solicitor, to take care of the town's business. I just don't know if legally we're doing that, but I would set a date to that. So I would offer an amendment to February 28th.
Very well.
Is that the last day in February?
Yes. That's also virtually identical to my motion, but that's fine.
I didn't know that.
All right, I amend my motion to the 28th. I amend my motion to be like your motion
I'll
was.
second it.
The motion is made and seconded to extend the engagement of Richard Humphrey as the town solicitor until the selection process has been completed on or about the 28th of February. Motion is made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Yes, sir.
Have you determined what the selection process will be? Will it be low bidder, best value? There's various ways you could approach that.
That was, the quick answer to your question is that's what we need to convene to do next in order to, we believe we have narrowed the field and we need to decide what questions and how to propose to the candidates that we want to propose it to, what can you do for us? What will you do for us? And what form will that question take? That's taking longer than I expected. As a result, here we are, more than 60 days from the election. So I'm simply trying to set that thing aside so that we can focus on deciding how to present to, I'll call it, the finalists in the process. What say you to these questions? And I think we'll have a fairly, I don't know, we'll have questions for it. We'll have,
Negotiations?
yeah, we will be in negotiation for the answers to questions that we will pose to them. And I expect that their answers will be structured quite differently from each other. So we'll need to be agile enough to compare apples to oranges and see which is the better deal. So that's part of the process that I see going forward. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
No,
Andrew, you said no?
no, yeah.
Okay. So the motion carries 3-1. Thank you. We have a group of people here who are waiting for a specific. Would there be a motion to move new business 4 to the next point of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 4 is this: consider allowing the family of Charles and Isabella Bone to place an appropriate stone in the old burying ground to document their internment, and to authorize Marjorie O'Toole and the town clerk to oversee this effort. And I believe that Mr. Bowen has
I very much appreciate this getting on the agenda. I know that my cousin, Peter Morrissey, has been in touch with you as well. We have kind of been working divergent paths for the same goal. I don't know Mr. Morrissey very well. He's somewhat of a distant cousin, but, so my name is Sean Bowen, and I have the honor to represent my family and my great-grandparents, Isabella and Charles Bone, who are buried across the street in the old burial ground. And they were buried without a headstone. So here's where we are now, down here. There are 2 headstones presently in the family plot. One is where 3 children are buried, and one is where a 20-year-old, their sister, 20 years old, is buried. So as a frame of reference, Pikes Peak here, they're in the first line of the old Commons burial ground. So jumping into, if you can indulge me a little bit, I will make it quick, I won't go too long. My great-grandparents, Isabella Taylor and Charles Bone, were born in Scotland in the mid-1800s, and they emigrated to Little Compton in 1870. They were married in the Congregational Church in 1871, and their first child was born in 1872, Eliza. Eliza is the great-great-grandmother of Peter Morrissey. Over the course of the next 24 years, they had 10 children. My grandfather is the youngest. My grandfather was born in 1896. He died in 1977. Of the 10, 4 died young. 3 were children, and 1 was a 20-year-old who died in 1903. As I said, they were buried across the street. There was never a headstone put there. We always knew that they were buried there, but we didn't know quite where, if you could. So my cousin has done more genealogy than I have. And there are an awful lot of names who stem from Charles and Isabella Bone. And this is a picture of Eliza Bone, the firstborn, in 1872. I got this picture, actually, they sent this picture back to her sister in Scotland in 1872. And I got an email to me from somebody in 1872. My father, who died in 2015, never saw a picture of his great-grandparents. Didn't know where they were buried, of his grandparents. Didn't know where they were buried. And so it had always been somewhat of a mystery. Hold on. You could.
Again.
So, as I said, we always believed that they were born in, across the street. And the Marcy's did quite a bit of research, and they went to talk to Potter's Funeral Home in Westport. They obtained death certificates. Isabella and Charles died 6 weeks apart in 1932, which my father was a year old, so he was probably at the funeral, but he never remembered that. And the death certificates and Potter's records indicate that they were buried in the old cemetery, but they didn't have a plot record. And in an email to the Morrisseys, they also indicated that Jenny, who is the 20-year-old who was buried here, who does have a headstone, they had a record of burying her, but had no plot number as well. The 3 children were buried before Potter's went into business, so they died in the 1880s. So interestingly, in 2018, a professor from Salve Regina, Dr. John Marcoux, was doing ground penetrating radar, was on contract with the town or the Historical Society, I'm not sure, but the purpose was to identify unmarked graves, particularly in Slave Row, what they call the enslaved burial grounds. And interestingly, the 2 headstones up here are where my family is buried. And there are only supposed to be four graves there, 3 infants and 1 adult. However, you can see 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, 5, 6. And so Marjorie O'Toole believes that this research is correct, that Charles and Isabella were buried between their children, in between their headstones. And so what we propose is to erect a modest headstone in between those 2, in between their children. I measured there's 50 inches, so there's plenty of room to erect a headstone in there to commemorate their life and their death. And they were the first generation of our family in this town, in this country. And we're proud of that, and I have the honor to request of the town permission to erect a headstone.
Can I make that motion?
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Is your last name Bone?
Bone. So my grandfather was born Edward Bone in 1896, and he changed it to B-O-W-E-N.
May I extend our apologies for misrepresenting your family for so many years. Trust me, I know all about it.
I very much appreciate the
Thank you.
opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Back to new business 1, sir.
Letters of interest for the Conservation Commission, for which there is 1 vacancy.
I'm happy to make that nomination for Ed Bowen.
Okay, well, hang on a moment.
2?
We have 2.
Oh, I thought there was just one.
Well,
Vacancy.
there's 1 vacancy. I have a letter from Ed Bone, and then the incumbent Don McNaughton actually submitted a letter for reappointment. So you have 2.
I'll stick to my motion to Ed Bowen. Nominate Ed Bowen, Conservation.
Is there a second?
I'm only not seconding this, Patrick, because we generally go to some sort of an interview process if there are multiple candidates to fill 1 position, so.
There being no second, is there alternate motion?
I'll make a motion to interview the 2 candidates for the position.
I'll second it.
Motion is made and seconded to interview Mr. Bowen and Mr. McNaughton for the position. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Is that a late addition to the packet? I just missed it.
Yes, it came in today.
So it wasn't in the, was it in my
It's not
packet?
in the packet.
Okay, so I didn't see it.
I'm just kidding. And are you going to do that before the next council meeting? Did I understand that? Okay.
Please.
Yeah.
How many committees can you be on? Town appointed?
Can a person be on? There is not a limit. There's a limit to elected officials serving in appointed positions, but there's not Yeah, there's not a rule per se. The second vacancy is 3 vacancies on the Harbor Commission.
Do we only have the 3 applicants?
Well, you have Ian Parenti, who is an incumbent representing the Fishermen's Association. He has submitted a letter. Ben Gauthier, who is a representative of the recreational boaters, and he submitted a letter. And then the person who held the representation for Secana Yacht Club was Jeremy Howard, and he is unable to continue that. And the Secana Yacht Club has submitted a letter requesting that Margaret Manning be appointed in his stead.
Okay, I'll make a motion to move those 3 appointments.
I'll second that one.
The motion is made and seconded to reappoint the 2 incumbents and to appoint Margaret to the 3rd position. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next item is 2 members of the Housing Trust.
They're both the incumbents, Patrick Bone and Isabel Mattia, and they have both submitted letters of interest.
Motion to reappoint.
I'll second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. The Planning Board, 3 members.
We have Mary Satel, Bob Torsha, and Ed Bowen, and they've all requested to be reappointed.
Motion to reappoint.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 2 members of the Recreation Committee.
The incumbents, David McGregor and Michelle Stecker, have both asked to be reappointed.
I'll move that.
Reappoint.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And the Tree Warden.
Jason Burchett, who is your incumbent, has asked to be reappointed.
Motion to reappoint.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The second item of new business is to receive a letter of resignation from Don McNaughton, resigning his position on the Budget Committee due to his recent appointment to the Agricultural Conservancy. Is there a motion to accept the letter?
Motion to accept the letter with gratitude for his service.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is a memo from the administrator seeking permission to advertise via request for proposal for the replacement of the Town Landing Wellhead House.
Before you go any further, please,
Yes.
due to that resignation, you should have confirmed the appointment of the most recent highest vote getter from the last election. And that, lost my name.
Can you say his last name?
Peter Bermudez.
Peter
Peter
Bermudez.
Bermudez, thank you. I didn't.
Excellent.
Bermudez.
Andrew.
Return to that item. Is there a motion to appoint the next highest vote getter in the most recent election for Budget Committee?
So moved.
Peter Bermudez to the
Second.
position.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you
Thank
for keeping. A memo to advertise an RFP for the replacement of the Town Landing Wellhead House.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Go ahead.
Tony, does this include the stonework as well as the woodwork on top, or?
Yes, the whole thing,
The whole-
right from the land up.
Okay.
You're gonna put a new, does it need any sort of like foundation or something? Or
They have to rebuild the foundation somewhat, it has fallen apart somewhat, then they'll install the cap.
So it's going to be rebuilt in kind. It's going to look the same.
Yes.
The same as it used to. All in favor?
Aye.
Consider a copy of a letter and certificate of appreciation received from the Rhode Island Department of Health recognizing the contribution of Little Compton to the state's COVID-19 response and vaccine campaign in those 3 years just past, 2020 through 2020.
Motion to place on file.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Communications, a request from the Prevention Coalition for budget funding in the amount of $750.
I'll make that motion.
To,
Motion to put it in the budget folder. Is
Yeah.
that what you're moving?
I did.
Okay, second.
Discussion. All in favor?
aye.
Thank you for your patience. Request from Charles Canane to hold the shortest St. Patrick's Day Parade in Rhode Island. That parade to occur on Sunday, March 18th, on Main Street in Adams.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I believe Sunday is wrong. I believe it's a Saturday.
I think I just went with what he had in his letter. In his letter, it does say Sunday, so that's why I typed it. I didn't check the date itself.
Sunday last year.
March 18th. Yeah, it's a Saturday, it's the 18th.
Saturday.
It's a Saturday.
So it's, the 18th is correct, it's the day of the week that's mistaken.
Yes. it's
Okay.
Sunday the 18th.
All right.
So the motion then would reflect,
Amend my motion to Saturday, March 18th.
I'll second it.
all in favor? Aye. Thank you. The next is a copy of a resolution adopted by the Exeter Town Council urging rejection of changes to the Rhode Island Enabling Act as proposed in Rhode Island House of Representatives Land Use Commission. Would there be a motion to place this
Motion
on
to place
file?
on file.
Second. Discussion on that. All in favor?
Aye.
And a public notice for proposed rulemaking and public hearing. Ocean State Adaptation and Resilience Fund, hearing to be held January 24th in the Department of Administration.
Motion to place on file.
Second. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Consent file.
Motion to place the consent calendar on file, unless someone wants to pull something.
I do, just quickly, one, copy of letter sent to town administrator, granting extension of the submission of the town of Compton audit financial report, I'm just curious why.
The auditors came across a couple things in question, and they needed additional time. So we made a request to the Auditor General for an extension.
Is there a time limit on the extension?
Yes, January 31st.
Thank you.
The auditors have revisited and are satisfied to our knowledge, so we expect to receive word that the audit is complete. Any other matters? Is there then a motion to place the consent calendar on file?
I did, sir.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
The bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
Second. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. There being no further business before the council, we'll declare the meeting adjourned.
So Patrick, I'm gonna be burping all night long.
Are we still recording?
I don't care.